Morning, YouTube. This is Fragments of Memory, aka the Armchair Philosopher. And I wanted to talk to you about how I think our elders didn't give us the full picture. And what I mean by that is many of our parents, our teachers, they try to tell us things that are for our betterment so we can advance, so we can try to make our way throughout this planet. And they give us their history, their experiences, their knowledge, and all of that's good. But sometimes I think the older generation doesn't really understand the realities of today. And what was a reality for them back in those times may not necessarily be a reality for the younger generation now. I mean, yes, there are certain things that are universal. I'll concede to that. I'll say, hey, look, people have to still deal with financial troubles. People still have to deal with heartbreak. People still have to deal with finding employment. And yes, their advice is good. It's very wonderful to receive. However, this doesn't necessarily mean it will always be accepted in the same spirit in which it was given. And sometimes, for lack of a better term, older people can come off a little crabby, can come off a little bit, for lack of a better term, fussy. I can tell you, growing up, me and my father have always had difficulties. And many a time I'd be doing something and then he'd sit there try to tell me how to do it the quote unquote correct way, or he'd be trying to give me a piece of information about something. And many a times he wouldn't just tell me and keep it moving. He would sit there and just every little move I made, he would just jump all over me. Then turn around and say, I'm not fussing at you though. But I'm like thinking in my head, dude, I totally feel like I'm being fussed at right now. I don't feel like this information is helpful at this moment. Now, looking back, some of those things I was told and taught have assisted me. However, when you're dealing with someone that's younger, and even me today now, I'm in my 30s now, I can remember I always have this mindset of, how will this thing you're telling me help me now? Not, is it going to be useful in the future? How's it going to help me now? And I think that's also another dilemma in dealing with the younger generation. Many of the younger generation only see the now. And even though I know time passes, and it can pass very quickly, well, it only feels like yesterday that I was in my early 20s. And since then, I've seen people getting married, having children, having a few families, and their children are getting older and pushing the teen years now. So for me, I'm just like, wow, time sure does fly. However, just in that moment, and I'm talking in that particular moment, sometimes the information that is given isn't always useful in the moment. And also sometimes I don't think that the older generation remembers what it's like to be younger. Sometimes I think they forget what it was like to be a child. They forget what it was like to be a teenager or even a young adult. Now, sometimes I've been at like McDonald's or something like that, maybe to grab a cup of coffee. And I'll hear these elderly and senior citizens talking about how the younger generation doesn't know anything. The young generation don't know nothing. All they got is book learning. However, these are the same people that told their kids, hey, go to school, do well in school, and you'll get a good job. In fact, those parents would insist, hey son, do your homework. Hey daughter, do your homework. Hey daughter, pay attention in class. Hey son, don't act up in class. Yet you then turn around and say, oh, we don't know all you know is that book learning. Sometimes I think information, when a teacher, or let me go to the teachers. Teachers tell you, hey, do well in school. Get a good education so you can get a good job. Pay attention in class. Yet, these same teachers don't present you the full picture. And what I mean by that is, they don't tell you, hey, college isn't for everyone. They don't tell you, hey, there is something called student loan debt. You know, they don't tell us about that. They just keep pushing, go to school, go to school, go to school, go to school. So that's all we hear, or at least that's what I heard a lot of growing up as a child, and even in my teenage years. And by my teenage years, I was a lousy student in school. In fact, I dreaded going. Yet, there was that push to go to school. Go to school, get a good education, get a good job. And I'm at a point where I did try to go to school, didn't work out. Now I'm in student loan debt, and debt collectors are after me. So, you know. And again, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that sometimes when people speak, they forget to provide a complete picture. They give you a half picture, a partial picture, but not the full story. And sometimes I think older people forget that at times. Yes, we're only human, I will concede. But sometimes it just really irks me when I hear an older person say, y'all don't know nothing about this. Well, in some cases, a lot of these older people were not as pristine as they like to present themselves, nor were they perfect. Nor do they realize that they are products of their time. Just as I am a product of the time I was born in and raised in. Now, this is not an excuse to not do better for yourself, but it is a factor in which we often encounter why we do the things that we do. And I even had one older guy say, you couldn't survive back in my day. Well, if I had lived back in your day, I would have probably survived simply on the strength of, I would have been born into your time and had the opinion of someone else's, had the same opinions of someone of your time and environment. Because ultimately, that's a reality. Sometimes people don't think about what they say, they just kind of talk. And sometimes I feel like the older generation can just be really self-righteous. This sort of holier than thou attitude. And the reality is, you can always learn something from somebody, whether they're older or whether they're younger. It's never a question of, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm losing my thoughts here for a minute, but it's never a question of, hey, it's not that you're not giving good advice. It's just that sometimes I might not see where it's applicable right now. Right now I don't see how I relate to it or how it relates to me. I see it as sort of disconnected. It doesn't work into my scheme of life or pattern, you know, so. And I'm saying this as a man in his 30s. So again, I don't think that the older generation, they're just like, oh yes, I'm just gonna speak on some things, and it's like, well, it doesn't work that way. You actually have to recognize that everybody's situation is different, I guess. Well, at this point I'm rambling, but I felt like it was something that I just really had to get off my chest. Hey YouTube, peace, have a good day, and if you're in the Midwest like me, stay warm.